We make three classic errors when we assess. First, we assess when we already know the answer. Second, when we are not sure of the answer, we collect more of the same information at the same time using highly correlated measures and expect that it will make us more accurate. And finally, perhaps because of the first two mistakes, we don't interpret all of the information that we collect. Screening is like forecasting the weather. We can never have perfect prediction, but our goal is to make an accurate prediction so that we can make a difference for children. In academic screening, we want to know who is at risk, so we collect brief measures that forecast longer-term academic success. What I want to do in the next 5 minutes is demystify screening to help you screen smarter. It all begins with a scatter plot. Here is one child's score on the year-end test plotted against her score on the screening test. The vertical blue line is the proficiency criterion. Scores to the left are children who failed the year-end test, and scores to the right are children who passed. The horizontal blue line is the screening criterion. Children above the line are predicted to pass, and children below the line are predicted to fail. In the upper right quadrant are correct negatives. These are children who were predicted to pass and did pass. In the bottom left quadrant are correct positives. These are children who were predicted to fail who did fail. In the top left are the false negative errors, children who were predicted to pass but actually failed. And on the bottom right, we have the false positive errors, which are the children who were predicted to fail but actually passed. So if you have ever wondered how a screening criterion is set, here you see it's actually quite simple and involves only moving the horizontal line up or down to maximize the number of cases in the correct negatives and correct positives quadrants. Hopefully you can see the trade-off between errors. To make fewer false negative errors, we can move the bar up or make the screening harder, but doing so causes us to make more false positive errors, a lot more. The scatter plot becomes a contingency table, and regardless of the analytic approach you take, ultimately the number of correct positives go here, correct negatives go here, false positives go here, and false negatives go here. On the left, we have all of the real positives, which are the children who will really fail. From these, we compute sensitivity. On the right, we have all of the real negatives, which are the children who will really pass. From these, we compute specificity. From sensitivity and specificity, we compute everything else. Now, I want to point out that for the really high-performing students and the really low-performing students, you probably knew who they were before you screened. But these children in the middle, these children are the reason we screen. Unfortunately, this is also where all the error is. So buyer beware of any screening that has three categories of risk. Now that you understand the 4-cell contingency table, you can appreciate the sleight of hand that in effect removes the in-the-middle students from the accuracy analyses. When this happens, the accuracy of the measure is inflated. So back to our three errors. When we assess when we already know the answer, we invite error. Here is an extreme example. Giving a pregnancy test to a male will only confirm what we already knew or give us bad information. The mistake here is giving the test in the first place. When we choose our assessments, we must choose and consider the risk that people bring to the assessment. Here, we have two people with the same symptom, but their pretest risk is drastically different. This should cause the decision maker to assess and intervene differently for these two people, even though their symptoms or their screening scores are the same. Academic risks we should not ignore include prior referral, a recent move from a low-achieving school, special education eligibility, sometimes demographic risk factors, and always class-wide, grade-wide, or school-wide proficiency problems. If the pretest probability is very low, do nothing. If the pretest probability is very high, give intervention without screening. Save the screening for the in-the-middle kids. Here, we can see how three screening measures stack up in terms of correct decision making. In screening, we are making a rule-out decision, and these three measures perform very similarly. The red lines show us how well these measures can be used to diagnose a more serious problem. The third measure may have promise as a diagnostic tool, but it is not useful as a screening tool because it adds no greater rule-out value and costs 60 times the investment of instructional minutes. Here is an example of the effect of pretest probability on decision accuracy. When the base rate of failure is very high, a screening assessment is unlikely to be useful. But when intervention is used to reduce the base rate of risk, as it has been here, suddenly the very same screening can become very useful. So, to tie it up, don't use more than one screening at the same time. Use the risk information that children bring to the assessment. Choose the lowest cost measure that provides the best rule-out information. And finally, use instructional trials or intervention to improve decision accuracy. In screening, less may be more. Let's collect the best information in the shortest possible period of time so that we can get to what really counts, and that is intervention. Remember, in very high-risk contexts, even the Supermans of screening tests are doomed to inaccuracies. In high-risk contexts, intervention must be used to change the pretest risk before screening occurs. Let's focus on improving our methods for making decisions, accurate decisions, about the in-the-middle students.